Yesterday, you opened ChatGPT for what felt like just another conversation. Maybe you asked it to explain Python. Maybe you asked it to help write an email. Maybe you simply told it, "I'm learning Python." You closed your laptop and didn't think about that conversation again. It felt ordinary. Just another chat with an AI. Or at least, that's what you thought. Today, the next day, you open ChatGPT again. A brand new conversation. A completely blank screen. You start typing, and suddenly, something feels strange. It already seems to understand who you are. It knows the kind of answers you like. It remembers your ongoing project. Sometimes, it even remembers your name. And for a moment, you stop typing. Because one question quietly appears in your mind. How does it know? At first, the answer seems obvious. Maybe ChatGPT remembered you. Or maybe, every conversation is secretly teaching the AI something new. After all, that's how humans learn. We remember conversations. We learn from experience. So surely, artificial intelligence must work the same way, right? Surprisingly, almost everything in that assumption is wrong. Because behind one simple conversation, 3 completely different systems are quietly working together. And most people accidentally think they're all the same. To understand what's really happening, we need to follow just one tiny sentence. Imagine you type just 6 words. My favorite programming language is Python. It doesn't look important. It's just one sentence. But the moment you press enter, that sentence begins a journey. Where does it go? Does it travel into the AI's brain? Does it become permanent knowledge? Is it stored forever? Or does it disappear the moment the conversation ends? To answer that, we have to look inside ChatGPT. Not at the answers it gives, but at what happens before it gives them. Imagine walking into a classroom. A giant whiteboard stretches across the entire wall. Every time a student asks a question, the teacher writes it on that board. Every answer, every example, every correction stays right there. The teacher doesn't have to memorize anything. She simply looks back at the whiteboard whenever she needs context. ChatGPT works in a surprisingly similar way. Every message you send is added to something like a temporary workspace. As long as the conversation continues, it can still see everything written there. That's why it seems so smart. That's why it can answer follow-up questions. That's why it remembers what you said 5 minutes ago. But here's the important part. It isn't remembering, it's reading. And those 2 things are very different. Now, let's go back to that classroom. The lesson is over. Students leave. The teacher picks up an eraser and wipes the entire whiteboard clean. Every question, every answer, every example disappears. The next morning, a completely new class walks in. The board is empty again. That's exactly what happens when you start a brand new ChatGPT conversation. The temporary workspace is gone. Yesterday's discussion isn't sitting in front of the AI anymore, which explains something you've probably experienced. Sometimes, ChatGPT suddenly forgets everything. Not because it became less intelligent, not because something broke, simply because it's looking at a brand new whiteboard. But then, another mystery appears, because sometimes it doesn't forget. Maybe you've noticed this yourself. You start a completely new conversation, and somehow, ChatGPT still knows your name. It remembers that you're a software engineer. Maybe it remembers that you prefer short explanations, or that you're working on a YouTube channel. Wait, if the whiteboard was erased, where did that information come from? Was it secretly hiding somewhere? Did the AI remember it after all? The answer is both simpler and much more interesting. Because we've been looking at the wrong place. The whiteboard was never meant to store everything. This is the moment where almost everyone gets confused. Because we use one word, memory, to describe three completely different things. The first is the temporary whiteboard we've already seen. It exists only while the conversation is alive. The second is something much smaller. Think of it like a notebook sitting beside the teacher's desk. Instead of rewriting the teacher's brain, it simply contains a few useful notes. Your name, your preferred writing style, your ongoing project, details that can help make future conversations smoother. And then, there's the third one, the biggest one of all, the AI's actual knowledge, everything it learned. Long before you ever opened ChatGPT, 3 different places, 3 different purposes, and suddenly, one of the internet's biggest mysteries starts making sense. But one question still refuses to go away. If I spend hours talking to ChatGPT, asking hundreds of questions, correcting its mistakes, teaching it new things, surely some of that must become part of the AI itself, right? It's an easy assumption to make, because that's exactly how humans learn. Every conversation changes us. Every experience teaches us something. So naturally, we expect artificial intelligence to behave the same way. But modern AI works very differently. Your conversation doesn't instantly rewrite the model. In fact, doing that would be far more difficult than most people imagine. Imagine someone walks into a library and changes one sentence in one single book. Would the entire library suddenly become different? Of course not. Now imagine that library isn't thousands of books. It's billions. That's much closer to the scale of modern AI training. Engineers feed these systems enormous collections of books, websites, research papers, computer code, and countless other examples. Then, thousands of powerful computers spend weeks, sometimes months, searching for patterns across all that information. Training a model isn't like editing a document. It's more like rebuilding an entire city, brick by brick. That's why one conversation can't suddenly rewrite everything the AI knows. But if today's conversation isn't changing today's model, why do AI companies sometimes ask whether they can use your chats to improve future versions? That answer is where our story goes next. Let's answer the question we left hanging. If your conversations don't instantly train ChatGPT, why do AI companies sometimes ask whether they can use them? The answer begins with one important idea. Your conversation and AI training live in 2 completely different worlds. On one side, there's you, sitting at your laptop, asking questions, solving problems, learning something new. On the other side, there are enormous data centers, thousands of powerful computers, engineers, researchers, massive training pipelines. The scale is almost impossible to imagine. Those 2 worlds don't connect every time you press enter. They are separated by careful engineering, strict review processes, and long training cycles. That's why your conversation doesn't instantly become part of the AI. The bridge between those worlds is much longer than most people realize. Now, the message you've probably seen, "Help improve our models," suddenly makes much more sense. That message isn't saying, "We're teaching today's ChatGPT while you chat." It's saying something very different. If you choose to share your conversations, they may become one tiny piece of a much larger improvement process. Imagine collecting millions of puzzle pieces from millions of different people. One piece tells you almost nothing, but together, they can help build a clearer picture. That's much closer to how future AI models improve. Not one conversation, millions of them. Carefully selected, carefully reviewed, carefully processed. Today's conversation might help build tomorrow's AI, but it doesn't instantly change the one sitting in front of you today. Let's go back to our classroom one last time. Imagine your favorite teacher. During class, she writes today's lesson on the whiteboard. That's the current conversation. On her desk sits a small notebook. Inside, She keeps useful notes about her students, their names, their strengths, the topics they struggle with. That's saved memory. But none of those things are the teacher's actual knowledge. Everything she's learned over years of study lives somewhere else, inside her own mind. That's the AI model itself. 3 completely different places. 3 completely different jobs. Once you see that, ChatGPT suddenly feels much less mysterious. Now, let's return to where our story began. Yesterday, you typed one simple sentence. I'm learning Python. At the time, it looked like nothing more than a normal conversation. But hidden beneath that single message, 3 different systems quietly came to life. A temporary workspace to understand your current conversation, saved memory, if available, to personalize future chats, and an AI model, carrying years of knowledge, long before you ever arrived. They all worked together, so seamlessly, that it felt like one single brain. But now, you know it isn't. Here's the surprising part. We didn't spend the last few minutes learning how ChatGPT works. We spent the last few minutes unlearning one very common misunderstanding. Because the hardest part of understanding technology isn't always learning something new. Sometimes, it's realizing that we've been asking the wrong question. ChatGPT doesn't magically remember everything. It doesn't instantly learn from every conversation. And it isn't pretending to know you. It's simply using different systems for different purposes. Conversation, memory, knowledge. Once you separate those 3 ideas, one of the biggest mysteries surrounding AI suddenly becomes surprisingly simple. Every day, technology feels a little more magical. AI, databases, distributed systems, software that somehow serves billions of people. But behind every piece of technology, there's a story. And once you understand that story, the magic becomes engineering. If you enjoy discovering how modern systems actually work, subscribe to Debug with Dorji, because every week, we'll take another piece of technology that millions of people use and uncover the engineering hidden beneath it. I'll see you in the next one. In the